Hi there, everybody. So, we are talking about the four steps of the scientific method, right? The four steps. The first step is when we present a theory, right? We present a theory. Then we investigate. After we investigate, we do experiments. After the experiments, we come to conclusions. When do we come to conclusions? After the experiments. Very good. Do we come to conclusions before the experiments or after the experiments? That's it. We come to conclusions after the experiments. That's it. And what are the conclusions? What are the conclusions? The conclusions are what? If our theory is true or false, right? We present a theory. After all the four steps, we come to the conclusions. The conclusions. Is the theory true or false? A teoria é verdadeira ou falsa? Is the theory true or false? We depend on the results, right? The results. A gente já conhece essa palavra, né? Os resultados. Os resultados dos experimentos, right? What results? The results we get after we do the experiments, right? After we do the experiments, what do we get? We get results. Do we get results after we do the experiments? Yes, we do. What do we get after the experiments? We get results, right? And these results may be true or false, não é? Os resultados não podem ser verdadeiro ou falso. Yes. May the results be true or false? Yes, they may. What may the results be? The results may be true or false, right? This result, true or false, is the conclusion. What is the conclusion? The conclusion is true or false. Is the conclusion true or false? Yes, it is. Fantastic. Fantastic. What happens when the conclusion is true? When the result is true? What happens? When the result is true, it becomes the theory becomes a scientific law. Lembra do verbo to become? A gente já conhece, é o verbo se tornar, não é? Tornar-se. Ele vira, né? Vira uma lei científica, né? Ele se torna uma lei científica. The theory, after the results, the theory becomes a scientific law. Does the theory become a scientific law? Yes, it does. What does the theory become? It becomes a scientific law. Does it become a scientific law? Yes, it does. What does the theory become? it becomes a scientific law. All right. When does it become a scientific law? When the conclusion is true. Aha. Does it become a scientific law when the conclusion is true? Yes, it does. Does it become a scientific law when the conclusion is false? No, it doesn't. When does it become a scientific law? When the conclusion is true. Does it become a scientific, does the theory become a scientific law when the conclusion is true? Yes, it does. When does the theory become a scientific law? Fantastic. The theory becomes a scientific law when the conclusion is true. Let's do it again. When does the theory become a scientific law? Fantastic. The theory becomes a scientific law when the conclusion is true. All right. Very good. Very good. And what happens when the conclusion is false? It means that the theory is false, né? Quando a conclusão é falso, quer dizer que a teoria é falsa, a teoria não serve, né? The theory is not good, doesn't work, right? Right, very good. Let's conjugate the verb to become one more time. I become you, become he, becomes she, becomes it, becomes we, become you, become they, become. Perfect. So, when does the theory become a scientific law? The theory becomes a scientific law when the conclusion is true. Perfect. Very good. Isso é muito importante, mas tem um detalhe muito importante no raciocínio, no pensamento. Qual é o detalhe? O detalhe é a lógica. Logic. Repeat that. Logic. Again, logic. All right. When you work with a theory, you have to think of logic. Is there logic in this theory? Is there logic? Let's think about it. Let's study it to see if there is logic, né? Para ver se tem lógica nesse pensamento. Why? Because logic must be the base of thinking, tá? The base é a base, é a base. Então a lógica tem que ser a base do pensamento. Logic must be the base of thinking. Porque se não tiver lógica, o que existe é manipulação. A gente vai estudar isso mais para frente. Estudar esses mecanismos, como é que eles funcionam na mente da pessoa. How must logic be? Logic must be the base of thinking. Must logic be the base of thinking? Yes, it must. What must be the base of thinking? Logic must. Must logic be the base of thinking? Yes, it must always think with logic. Always, right? Because if there is no logic, there is only manipulation, tá? Manipulação. Depois a gente esmiuça. What must logic be? Logic must be the base of thinking. Must logic be the base of thinking? Yes, it must. What must be the base of thinking? Logic must. Must logic be the base of thinking? Yes, it must. What must logic be? All right, logic must be the base of thinking. Thinking, right? Logic must be the base of thinking. All right, so at the end of the experiment, the scientists come to conclusions. What happens at the end of the experiments? At the end of the experiments, scientists come to conclusions. All right, what are the conclusions? The conclusions are if their theory is true or false. If their theory is true or false, what happens if the theory is true? If the theory is true, it becomes a scientific law. Does it become a scientific law if the theory is true? Yes, it does. What does it become if the theory is true? It becomes a scientific law. Very good. And how must scientists think? Scientists must think with logic. Must scientists think with logic? Yes, they must. And how about everybody else? How must people think? People must think with logic too, right? Everybody must think with logic. Logic is why? Because logic is the base of thinking. Is logic the base of thinking? Yes, it is. What is logic? Logic is the base of thinking. Fantastic. Very good. Keep that in mind. Okay? Keep that in mind. Everything you think, every time you think, everything you think about, always with logic. Alright? Então, capricha aí e volta pra gente continuar. See you later, alligators.